File number 0473B. Classification: Restricted Access. National Park Service, Internal Ranger Records. The first line was short, typed in an old machine font. But what came after read like something that should have never made it onto paper. The report was dated July 18, 1989. The author, Ranger Thomas Hale, a field officer stationed in the Wind River Range of Wyoming. His notes began simple enough: weather logs, trail closures, wildlife sightings. The kind of stuff that fills hundreds of dusty binders across the country. But halfway down the page, the tone shifted. Entered unlisted cave along Western Ridge. Carvings appear recent. Tools unknown. Composition unidentifiable. Continuing deeper. Radio interference increasing. And then, just like that, the entry stopped. No follow-up report. No signature. No official closure. The next document in the file, stamped 3 days later, read only one word: sealed. For over 3 decades, that file sat buried in the archives of the U.S. Forest Service, marked "Do Not Reproduce." But last year, someone leaked it, along with a photograph of the cave wall. The image showed a series of carvings that archaeologists say should not exist. Not because of what they depict, but because of when they appear to have been made. This is the story of what was found inside that cave, and why the National Park Service tried to erase every trace of it from public record. They called it the Hale Discovery. But after what came next, the other rangers just started calling it the cave that shouldn't be there. File number 0473B. Classification: Restricted Access. The document is short, 5 pages, typed on a 1980s typewriter, creased from being folded too many times. At first glance, it looks like every other routine field report from the National Park Service. But the further you read, the clearer it becomes. This one was never meant to be read by the public. The author's name: Thomas Hale, Park Ranger, Wind River Range District, Wyoming. His assignment was simple: map a newly exposed section of canyon wall after a small rock slide near Beartooth Creek. The first 2 pages are ordinary. Notes on sediment layers, weather conditions, equipment checks. But somewhere on the 3rd page, Hale's language changes. His tone turns from procedural to personal, almost frantic. Entered unmarked cave at approximately 1840 hours. Opening faces west. No record of this formation in the 1978 Geological Survey. Carvings appear inside, possibly ancient. Will document further. That's where it starts. A cave that doesn't appear on any topographical map, containing carvings that weren't supposed to exist. According to the coordinates in the file, the cave sat miles from any known indigenous or settler site. Yet the markings, as later analysis suggested, weren't natural. They were deliberate. Hale's next recorded transmission came just after sunset. Systems repeat along every wall. No visible soot or tool marks. I don't think these were carved recently, but the rock hasn't aged either. My radio's cutting out. The handwriting near the bottom becomes uneven, letters pressing deeper into the paper, as if written under duress. The last entry reads only, "The light changed. It's like they're watching me." That was the final message Ranger Hale ever sent. His truck was discovered idling near the cave's entrance, headlights still on, driver's door open. There was no sign of struggle, no footprints leaving the site, no blood, no sign of wildlife, just an...
The cave wasn't on his map. He'd been walking the ridgeline since noon, marking trail washouts, logging rock falls, nothing unusual. But as the sun began to drop, his flashlight beam caught an opening in the stone, half hidden behind a fallen spruce. He crouched, brushing away the moss and dirt. The hole was narrow, maybe 3 feet across, but deep enough that his light didn't touch the end. Rangers are trained to note, not enter, unlisted formations. But curiosity is a quiet thing. It doesn't ask for permission. He leaned in, the radio crackling at his side. "This is Hale. Checking anomaly along West Ridge. I'll take a quick look inside." His voice echoed back to him, warped and hollow. Inside, the air was still, too still. No dripping, no wind movement, not even the faint scurry of insects. It smelled of iron and old earth, like something that hadn't been disturbed in centuries. He moved forward, each step swallowed by darkness. The beam from his flashlight caught something. Lines, shallow grooves across the wall. At first he thought they were scratches from shifting stone. Then he saw the pattern. Perfectly parallel, geometric, repeating. They formed shapes. Tall, narrow figures, arms raised toward a circle. He whispered without realizing it. Who the hell carved this? The radio sputtered again, letting out a hiss that filled the cave. Static rolled through the channel. Then a voice, faint and distorted. "Hale, you copy? Leave the site." He froze. The voice didn't sound like his partner's. It sounded closer. The beam from his flashlight flickered once, then steadied. And that's when he saw them. More carvings. Not just on the walls, but the ceiling, the floor, spiraling inward toward a central chamber. The deeper he looked, the more they seemed to shift. Not moving, but changing, like wet ink that refused to dry. Hale took a single step closer. The sound echoed like a thunderclap. "This is Ranger Hale," he said into the radio, voice trembling. I think there's something alive down here." The static swelled, then silence. That was the last anyone ever heard. To understand what happened in that cave, you need to know who Thomas Hale was. He wasn't some reckless explorer chasing myths. Hale had been with the Park Service for 12 years, a field ranger known for precision and caution. His colleagues described him as meticulous, maybe even overly so. Before his post in Wyoming, Hale worked seasonal assignments across the western parks, Glacier, Yellowstone, and the Tetons. His job wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. To catalog landslides, monitor animal migrations, and verify that what appeared on the geological maps actually matched the terrain. By 1989, he'd settled into a quiet rhythm, the kind of man who still carried a notebook when most were switching to radios and portable recorders. That's what made his report so strange. His notes didn't read like a ranger's. They read like a witness's. The site he discovered sits deep in the Wind River Range, part of the Rocky Mountain backbone that runs through western Wyoming. The terrain there is brutal. Narrow ridges, high-altitude lakes, and miles of forest so dense that even modern LiDAR scanning has left parts of it unmapped. Most caves in that region are well-documented limestone formations, some with prehistoric markings linked to ancient tribes like the Shoshone and Crow. But this cave, Hale's Cave, doesn't match any of them. It wasn't even on the 1978 geological survey sheets. That's why the discovery caught the Park Service's attention so fast. When Hale's truck was found and his last transmission logged, the search teams expected the usual: a fall, a cave collapse, maybe a bear encounter. But when they reached the site,
something felt off immediately. According to the brief written summary in the case file, the cave opening appeared man-made. Smooth edges, a consistent curve, not the ragged fracture you'd expect from natural erosion. One of the recovery crew members, whose name was redacted in the copy that surfaced later, wrote a single line in the margin. "This doesn't look like the mountain made it." Within 24 hours, the team was recalled. A private geological contractor was brought in, one not listed in the official ranger directory. From that point on, all field communication went dark. The carvings were spread along the walls of a cave that shouldn't even exist on that side of the ridge. No record of it on geological maps, no mention in any ranger reports before mine. But someone, or something, had been down there long before we were. I remember brushing off the dust from one of the figures and realizing the lines weren't made with stone tools. They were burned into the rock. The kind of precision you'd expect from a laser, except this was a sandstone formation estimated to be at least 8,000 years old. At first I thought it was a hoax. Maybe some overzealous hiker, maybe local kids trying to pull a prank. But then we found the second chamber. The air was thicker there, metallic, almost electric, and the walls were covered in carvings that looked like constellations. Not the ones you and I recognize, though. No Orion, no Big Dipper. These stars didn't exist in any chart known to man. At least, not yet. That's when the radio stopped working. No static, no signal, just silence. And that's when I knew. Whatever carved those walls was still here. The official record says the discovery happened during a wildfire containment survey in 1998. The ranger listed on that report, Harold S. Beckett, had served over 20 years in Forest Service. No history of erratic behavior, no disciplinary action, and not one mention of supernatural claims in his entire career. The cave wasn't part of any mapped route. In fact, that ridge had been sealed off since the late 1960s due to unstable terrain. But Beckett wrote that a landslide had exposed a narrow fissure near Cedar Hollow Creek. From the outside, it looked like nothing, just another limestone break. But what he found beyond that crack changed everything. He logged his first observation on May 22, 1998. The report described geometrically patterned wall etchings of unknown origin, ranging from 1 inch to 7 feet in height, resembling human figures, astronomical maps, and mechanical schematics. Those last words, mechanical schematics, raised eyebrows. This wasn't the kind of language a field ranger used, and that's why the file got flagged for review by the Department of Interior. Within a week, the cave was sealed. Beckett was transferred, and all copies of the original photographs vanished from the local archive. But one image survived. Found years later in a private estate sale, an undeveloped roll of Kodak film with a handwritten label that read, "Hollow Creek, do not file." The image that came out after processing didn't just show carvings. It showed something standing beside them. Beckett's log described the entrance as no more than 3 feet wide, barely enough for a person to crawl through sideways. He'd said the air inside was unnaturally cool, even though outside temperatures were near 90 that day. The first 30 feet of the passage showed nothing unusual. Standard limestone, damp walls, faint trickling from groundwater seepage. But after the first bend, the formation changed. The walls turned smoother, worked almost, as though something had carved them by hand. Except the striations weren't random. They ran in perfect parallel arcs, each one equidistant from the other, curving upward like the ribs of a massive vaulted chamber. When his flashlight caught the carvings for the first time, Beckett froze. He later wrote that they seemed to react to the light, like the minerals in the etching glowed faintly when illuminated, a kind of dull amber shimmer that faded the moment he moved the beam away. On the northern wall, he counted 14 humanoid figures. They weren't stylized like traditional native petroglyphs. These were elongated, disproportionate, each about 6 feet tall, with heads too narrow and limbs too long. In place of eyes, each figure had 2 circular depressions that seemed burned into the rock. The oddest part? Each one faced the same direction, toward the rear of the chamber. Beckett followed their gaze to what looked like a collapsed tunnel. The ground there was littered with fragments of what he called slag-like residue. Metallic flakes fused into the stone itself. He collected a sample, but no record shows it was ever tested. Then there was the sound. He wrote, "At 14:23 hours, a low-frequency vibration began, sustained for approximately 9 seconds. It did not register on my radio or recorder, but was physically felt in the chest cavity." He turned to leave after that. But before crawling back through the fissure, he took one final photograph. The film roll containing that image is the same one recovered decades later from that estate sale. What's visible behind him in that shot isn't Beckett. It's something else, half in shadow, with the same elongated limbs as the carvings on the wall. Beckett filed his incident report 2 days later, dated May 24, 1998. The report was classified as environmental anomaly geological and forwarded to his regional supervisor in Helena. Within 48 hours, the site was sealed and the coordinates were redacted from public geological maps. Officially, the explanation was simple: unstable cave structure, potential for collapse. But the follow-up actions didn't match the excuse. 3 unmarked government vehicles arrived that same week, carrying what witnesses described as surveyors with radiation equipment. Locals saw men in hazmat suits entering the ridge at night. The next morning, Beckett's logbook, camera, and field samples were removed from the ranger office under the pretext of an archival transfer. They were never seen again. Beckett himself was reassigned to Glacier National Park a month later. According to his co-workers, he never spoke about the cave again. But in a private letter written to his brother, he mentioned recurring nightmares. The same cave walls, glowing faintly, with the sound of that low vibration pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. After 2005, Beckett's name disappeared entirely from ranger rosters. Then, 2 decades later, a Freedom of Information request, part of a batch labeled Ranger Files release, revealed fragments of his original report. Entire pages were redacted, but what remained was enough to raise questions. One section, titled Subsurface Resonance Readings, listed measurements taken with seismic sensors that Beckett never carried. The data indicated a repeating signal, 36 seconds apart, coming from below the chamber floor. The document ends with a final line, handwritten in the margin. If they open it again, tell them not to touch the wall beneath the 7th figure. When the Ranger files surfaced online, researchers, archaeologists, and amateur investigators began comparing Beckett's descriptions to known prehistoric art. But nothing matched. Professor Daniel Hurst from Montana State University pointed out that the symmetrical figures bore no resemblance to any indigenous petroglyph styles in the region. He noted that traditional rock carvings were typically narrative, depicting hunts, rituals, or celestial events. But these? They followed geometric ratios, almost like blueprints. One section of the recovered sketch shows intersecting arcs with numbered markings along the edges. Hurst suggested they might represent positional mapping, as if whoever made them was charting something, not telling a story. Other experts disagreed. A few argued that the so-called mechanical schematics could be modern contamination, etched by metal tools in the last century. But the dating didn't support that. A 2001 mineral sample taken from nearby walls showed no evidence of modern metal abrasion, and the oxidation layer matched the surrounding strata, suggesting the carvings were at least several thousand years old. Then came the most unsettling theory, that the carvings weren't ancient at all, but predictive. An independent astrophysicist compared the constellations on the cave walls to modern sky charts. He found near-identical star alignments, but only when projected as the night sky will appear in the year 2700. If accurate, that means whoever carved them mapped a sky we haven't even reached yet. And then there's the question of the vibration. Geologists proposed natural resonance. Certain cave structures can amplify low-frequency sounds caused by shifting plates or wind. But no instrument has recorded a frequency as regular as the one Beckett described. 36 seconds apart, repeating, like a pulse or a signal. After the Ranger files were released online, several independent researchers attempted to locate the Hollow Creek site using Beckett's vague field coordinates. Most of them came up empty. But one group, an outdoor survey team based in Idaho, claimed they found the ridge in 2017. They compared terrain elevation data from the 1990s to modern satellite imagery. Something didn't add up. The same ridge Beckett described was still there, but a 3-acre section near its base had been digitally blurred on every major mapping service. You can see the difference yourself. The texture pixelates when you zoom in, like someone manually scrubbed that section. Local hikers reported that the area is fenced off with signage marked Federal Land Reclamation Zone, even though no such project exists in any public database. Drone footage taken from a legal distance shows an access road that didn't exist a decade ago, leading directly to that fenced perimeter. Then there's the audio. In 2020, a geocaching enthusiast uploaded a clip he recorded near Cedar Hollow Creek. You can still find the post archived on a hiking forum. The audio captured a low-frequency hum, steady, repeating, roughly one pulse every 36 seconds. The same interval Beckett documented 25 years earlier. Several acoustic engineers examined the recording. Their conclusion? The sound originated underground, about 400 meters deep. Too low for wildlife, too consistent for tectonic shift. A month after that clip went public, the original post vanished. The user's account was deleted, but mirrored versions still circulate under the tag #RangerFileFrequency. When contacted for comment, the U.S. Forest Service stated simply, "No record of a site known as Hollow Creek exists within our jurisdiction." But locals remember. In the small town of Redden, about 10 miles from the ridge, residents say the ground occasionally trembles. Not like an earthquake, but like something moving slowly underneath. One man swears the